Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Zahn Academy. I'm Fran from Zahn's Education Department, and today I have Dan Marrano CDT with me, who will be discussing an In the Lab series, Cache of the Clams, Why Can't Both Win? Today, we do have some poll questions that I'll be launching in just a couple of minutes that Dan has prepared for us. So we'd love it if you'd be interactive with us and answer the questions that come up. And we will also be doing a live Q&A at the end. So please type your questions into the bottom of your screen and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Everybody, here's Dan, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Fran. Thanks for having me back for another Zahn Academy. I look forward to this, and it's something we talked about and something I've thought about for a while. And it started, I have like a passion for milling. I really enjoy overcoming milling challenges, and as years gone on, the challenges have been different. But from the very first mill we had, there was always some kind of challenge that we kind of had to overcome. I can pop up some of my screen here. Milling technology, the milling technology itself and the mills have not changed that much. And, I don't want to like upset anyone. Yeah, we have C clamps and stuff like that, but pretty much 5-axis, maybe some extra angles that we can mill, but it's pretty much been the same for years now. The cam technology has become much more advanced, and that's really where the advancements have come in and actually improved our milling capabilities. And I was just telling Fran that we tossed this idea around, and I thought about it, and when she asked me to do this, I was like, oh no, how am I going to talk about it for an hour? What am I going to talk about? How am I going to get through an hour? And then what actually ended up happening was I had far more information that I could fit in this hour. So, you can keep going and going and going with this. This is just going to kind of be an overview of some of the benefits I see of having both Millbox and Hyperdent. And when we talk about Clash of the Cams, this is what kind of people come at. Very polarizing, especially on social media. You're seeing people argue Millbox, Hyperdent, one's better than the other, and there's other softwares that have similar arguments. And I just don't know if it has to be that way. I really think we can get along, and both softwares are great softwares, and both offer great support. Both have treated me extremely well. And I think it's rather unfair just to say, I got to have Hyperdent, right? You have to have Millbox. It really, it goes beyond that. And a little background, this was my first mill back in 2015, the first mill of Marrano Dental Arts, and a little 4-axis wheel and mini. And I had the basic software. This is just a stock photo here that I pulled from the internet of the cam software. And it did okay, but we started, obviously I wasn't milling this in this 4-axis mill. But it started to grow, the lab started to grow. It started to need a little more capabilities than this was able to handle. And this is what I got in 2016. It was from Cap at the time. I really kind of dreaded this some 3D jump at that time because coming from wheel and cam, everything was very quick, and I had seen this, and it just seemed like a lot. Wheel and cam is pretty easy. What ended up happening was within a month, I had to return this because there was a problem with the mill. And then I jumped to this because it was familiar. They had a sale on it coincidentally a month later. And actually, we still have this same mill running most of our PMMA. Very durable machine at the time. And it got us pretty far until we started growing a little bit and we needed a little bit more. And then we moved to this. And this did us really well for a number of years. The one we actually got was used. So we recently retired that one. And in 2021, we did take this Millbox dive. And my biggest concern was speed. So I went out and I got the one of the better computers I could find. And, we got through it. The mill itself was great. We still have this mill, original spindle. We had no problems with this at all. And we still have no problems with Millbox. And we the updates over the years helped us get through some of the challenges from when we first got that. But this was one of the challenges we came across was full arch screws. And those who are using them know the challenges that can arise with them. And so we went back to our old faithful in our mind at the time, which was this software and this mill. Unfortunately, it had its limitations, and this screw came to our life one day, and the Rosen screw gave us a lot of trouble in that older system. So we moved back to Sim Systems with these kind of restorations and Millbox, and they really helped us out with some tooling that we found so that we can get down into channels and mill these a little bit better. Then came along this guy, the Vortex screw, and this is when we turned to Hyperdent and Follow Me North America, where they had some stuff dialed in for this at the time. And this is really where we've settled in to our two systems at this point today. And this is where we are today with Millbox and Hyperdent both running on we have 3 of the 52 DCIs, 2 of the 53s, and we still have that little wheel and select mill in our some PMMA. So from my previous webinar I did, I talked about printing and the benefits of printing and the savings you can have from printing. And I mentioned reinvesting it, and CAM software is one of the ways we've reinvested. We don't just take that money and run to the bank. We've reinvested in the having both softwares, keeping both softwares updated, because it's very important to keep the updates and keep going along as they have the updates, because they're coming out with new strategies that really will benefit you. And it pops up there as the updates. It's really important to have the updates. It's not broken, don't touch it. I don't want an update. I'm scared of an update, because we've all gone through that with other softwares where we update and all of a sudden it breaks something else. And I'm really kind of turned away from that a little bit. And I keep the software update or, close to the newest version so that we can always have the best strategies for the mills and the restorations that we're going. I wanted to talk about this in the PC specs real quick. That i9-11900 was a computer that I bought for that first Roland and mill box. And I thought it was a pretty good computer. It cost me a good amount. Versus I recently updated our cams to this i7-13700K. I believe, even though the speed seems similar, that K definitely will make a difference. As we watch them, it kind of seems like the F gets kind of throttled and maxed out as it's trying to, and some computer users, more high-tech users will be able to tell you the differences. But I put this in here for you guys to see, and I ran both the same exact bridge through Millbox and Hyperdent, and show you the time. That i9, it took that bridge 29 minutes to calculate. I mean, 30 minutes. I mean, that's a long time to sit there and wait, especially if you're recalculating. The Hyperdent I didn't have it on this i9 anymore, but it was roughly half when I got it. So it was a big deal, a difference. But if you check that new computer that we have, Millbox and Hyperdent, we do have them on separate PCs now, just so we're not on top of each other trying to calculate stuff. But 7-8 minutes for Millbox and 6.5 minutes for Hyperdent. I mean, I would really say you can't afford that kind of time. Anybody who's really struggling with calculation times, look into your computer, and it's just a couple generations, and it makes a world of difference to invest just a little bit more in another computer. And I recently did just purchase another one of those Dells, and it was $1,800. Primary tooling, Millbox. Well, we run all Sierra tools. And in a mill box, our 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, we get about 125 hours. We set that. The tool still seems to be fine, but we're pretty satisfied just getting that 125 hours and not running until we find out something's chipping. That seems like pretty good tool life. Hyperdent, I wrote unknown because our primary hyperdent is hybrids. And so I just cut it in half. Someone told me one time, don't run your burrs long when you're running a hybrid. So I don't want to risk that hybrid chipping, especially when I'm putting 2 and 3 and 4 in the mill at a time. I can't really risk it, running out on the hybrid, second hybrid, and then going through 2 more in a puck changer and having a bunch of bad hybrids. So I do take that 2 millimeter now recently and move it to Millbox, and it still has plenty of life. But you see in my V panel, I will separate the tooling, the left and right, so that they're not sharing similar tools. Like 1, 2, and 3 have my Millbox nano diamonds, and then 11, 12, and 13 have the hyperdents. And just as an observation, Millbox uses the 1 millimeter about 2 to 1 to the 2 millimeter, and hyperdent's actually the opposite. So because of that is why I keep them separate, and I don't mix the tooling. Both great finishes as long as we've had the Sierra tools in there. When we've tried to venture outside, because someone sends you a burr or something like that, we've had lesser finishes. And recently the techs were on my case because we were having some fit issues. So definitely go with the Sierra tools, even if they tell you it's a Sierra strategy. I believe in just, I'm spending a couple extra more bucks. I am getting the hours out of it that makes it worth it as well. And it's producing quality results that I feel comfortable with. So why do we use both? And here's just a brief list of indication, strategy, tooling, ease of use, efficiency, convenience, and imports better. And there's time to time you put a restoration in and it just doesn't like it. And you're maybe changing angles or lines and stuff like that, insertion paths. And for whatever reason, maybe you're having trouble and you drop it in the other one and it just takes it. And so it works both ways like that. And it's nice to just quickly be able to move to a different software if you're really struggling with a restoration. Here's how a very basic way we use Hyperdent Millbox day to day. Millbox, we're using our everyday crown and bridge, our implant crown and bridge, zirconia over bars, and dentures, although we don't mill dentures that often. When we have, I found it very easy to put them in Millbox. And Hyperdent, we're doing any carryover crown and bridge and implant crowns. All of our hybrids are going into Hyperdent right now. All of our PMMA, crown and bridge, and hybrids are going into Hyperdent. And I put GCAM on there because I know some people maybe have struggled with milling GCAM. I put it in Hyperdent and it fit like a glove. So really no problems milling that. And starting in the mill box, I asked our milling technician what he thought of it. These were kind of just some of his ideas, that it was user friendly. He likes placing the pins and the supports, easy setup, filter for the search, strategy selection pops up you in the face, and then the tool table. And here's our setup for Millbox. We have 2 running side by side. This is available in Hyperdent as well. You can put 2 windows. You can open more than 2, but we generally just keep 2 so it doesn't slow it down too much. We're loading one as we're calculating on the other. And just to run through just a quick setup of a job in Millbox. Here's the initial screen. On the right, you pick your machine and your material, and they got loads of materials there that you can pick, and it'll help with your strategy selection. And then importing the case, and this is PMMA, and there's it'll pop up, and you get to easily pick from your choices of what you're milling. And there's the filter down there on the mid left. That was a nice feature I think that's added a year or two ago that we have this folder that doesn't get cleaned up very often of um, manufacturing files. So that's very useful to be able to filter and find the file very quickly. As you put your case in, your restoration, you hit mill, pops up, asks you for your strategies. And there's different strategies, the undercuts, and sometimes you'll get different options, and there's different options on the back end that can be added. The PMMA, the external roughening fast, that's the 3 millimeter burr. I found this burr to be extremely efficient and extremely well. It makes just milling PMMA that much better. You don't hear that like it's really hurting. Even on the 52 that I know a lot of people don't love to mill PMMA on, no problem. It cuts through butter. And I actually think the parts maybe fit better after the fact because it does so much of the milling and leaves less work for the 2 millimeter and the 1 millimeter. So definitely if you're milling PMMA, get that 3 millimeter tool for your rolling. And it pops up, and as you go, this is kind of less important, but as you're getting used to the systems and stuff like that and making sure, and maybe if you have two setups and you want to make sure you have the tools in the right pockets, um this is a nice pop-up that every time it's calculating, it comes up on your screen. Rotating parts is very simple. You just look at it, you get the little arrows, you drag it around, you move it around. They find that it's very efficient in Millbox. CaviFit is a nice feature and very easy to use in Millbox. Your tie bases may be a little loose and you want to tighten them up, or your PMMA is too tight and you want to loosen it up. Here's where you find that. We use this a little bit, maybe part specific, not really on regular crown and bridge on tooth-borne cases because it's not really needed. But like those implant cases that are the spacer is set by the manufacturer, this will help you tighten or loosen your parts. Boundaries. I put this in here because the other day, and I was going to mention, we haven't broken a burr, I think, in 2 years. I mean, every burr goes to life, and we broke a burr the other day. And it's because the tech clicked this external undercut and without opening up the boundary, and it crashed into the side of the zirconia. So you have to make sure you open up your boundaries. Like in a hybrid, I'd open up to like 3.5 or 4, run the simulations. 4 is usually a pretty safe bet. But keep an eye on, if you're checking off that external undercuts, that you do check your boundaries and then make sure it's opened up. Undercut selection. I was a big fan for a long time of, I want 5-axis full milling, and I've backed away from that. I really don't use that anymore. I kind of more prefer to select my undercuts that I mill. And like this, you get the angle, you paint the zone, the manual undercut, and what's nice too is it then does blow out your boundary, so that you don't have to worry about it colliding into the side. And I really like this, in hybrid milling, maybe the design, like you prefer not to mill at the undercuts on the lingual side or something like that. Just keep it a little bit thicker, and you really prefer to dial in on the buckle and the facial, and it's really useful. And then in this particular way, every time you select one, you're going to want to go through that paint zone in 3+2 again, and do a different angle, because if you just keep painting and going along, then it will crash. So you want to keep changing. Every time you change your view, you want to go through that and paint, and the color will change as you change that along there as well. Rerunning tool paths. This is helpful, especially say like those PMMAs that you get off and your part doesn't fit. If you're in the disc changer, then you can reload it, change your offset, rerun that specific strategy just for maybe the screw channel or anything like that, instead of running the whole job over. So It's partial execution of tool paths. It's pretty useful. The simulation in Millbox is great. I've always loved the simulation. It's fast. It goes through a hybrid in, just a couple of minutes. You have good visualization. Your collisions pop up down in the bottom right corner, and you can click on them and you can view them to see if it's something you should be really concerned about. I like the Millbox simulation, and anything that we run large, we would run through the simulation. And easy training. This is one of our techs. He does not mill. He does not know how to mill, but our milling tech was out the other day, and in less than 10 minutes, we had him running our whole phase of work. And I would say in 10 minutes was even fair to him because I was on the phone for half of it, kind of just pointing and grunting at him. And we got that whole day. So I mean, it's really intuitive to get through the software and get going. Hyperdent, and I have two windows here, and it's the traditional versus the new. I was trained on the traditional. I still like the traditional, just because I was trained on. And I was dipping my toes in the new a little bit here for the webinar, and I think you probably get to the same spot. And I don't know if they'll always keep the traditional. As someone who doesn't like change, I hope they do, but. That's the two views you get there. And again, you can have multiple instances of those open. Um, at the training I was at in Chicago, they showed us the auto import of STLs, so you could set your date range and stuff like that. We don't use that because our manufacturing folder is kind of cluttered and not well organized. So we just pick them one at a time. But this is the opening up a new STL, Buttman crown, zirconia. It pulled the shade from 3Shape. So that was kind of nice if it was accurate. And then, so you can have that. And then the machine, easily pick your machine, which you're going to. And this is walking you through very, very intuitively as well. This is the new version. Your blank, you set up your blank, and then your fixture. And this was the 53, so you have the two different fixtures, the 53 and the puck holder number. It's kind of nice that it pops up there so that you remember to put it in. There's been times where I've forgotten to change my number, and then I got to stop the calculation and start over. So in the new version, it's really nice that it's right there so you can see it. And then it opens up this window, and you got all your settings right there on the top left. And it's just walking you through setting up your case. Really nice. It was funny when I first got Hyperdent, I was like, oh, they should have a nice graphic user interface. And then this came up. And then so it is nice to have because it's walking you through setting this up. Down here, you can't see it, but it's flashing connectors, letting me know that I need to set up my connectors. The top bar, there's nothing there right now, but if there's something that needed to be worked on, it would be in that window. Very nice and easy, walking you through it. And some of the similar features is cavity fit. And I was mentioning before, you have to go into the templates and edit the templates if you have that module so that you can change your cavity fit. It's a nice feature as well. It is in there if you could dig into your templates and find that. They're all listed here with screw channels. Boundaries. I put this in here and people think goofy boundaries, but I almost never have to adjust my boundaries. Whatever it opens up at, it's almost always perfect. So that's a very nice feature when you're running hybrids. You don't have to worry about it. It's already set. I don't know, maybe twice in 2 years, I got an error in calculation. Opening up the boundary, fix it. It's very, very rare. The undercut selection, like I said, when I started with Hyperdent, I was like, I have to have 5-axis milling. And then this has really gotten me to kind of back away from that because I do really like this feature. And you're just drawing an area, And then as I move around, maybe I'm putting 3 or 4 of these user-defined areas around the undercuts so that it goes into those areas and puts a little extra milling. And I really like this, and it's super easy to set up. And I'll show you in a little bit a quick video. And again, this one also will open up the offset um, once it applies, so you don't have to worry about colliding into the side of your material. And it does a great job. Again, I've really backed away from having to do the 5-axis milling. I just do the undercut selection as I need to. Template profiles. These are kind of like the pop-ups as you're running your job in Millbox. You have to open them up and you can find them. Here's the new version versus the traditional. And in here, I wanted to highlight the 3mm roughening burr. Sorry for the grainy picture we got going on here, but I had to take a picture with my cell phone because the pop-up kept disappearing. But that's where you find that. I highly recommend, if you're running and rolling, to get that 3mm burr. It's really nice to have. Calculations. This is one of my favorite features of Hyperdent, is the calculating of hybrids. When I hit that button, if it doesn't give me an error, I know it's good to go. 99% of the time, I don't look at anything else, and maybe it's more. I mean, honestly, I couldn't tell you how many times I've had a problem, or I've actually had to go through and run a simulation. It's very, very, very infrequently. When that thing tells you that it's good, and you can run that. Hyperview is a nice, it's a kind of the start of their simulation, I would maybe call it, is that you see all the tool paths. You can click the light bulbs on and off as you go down the list there, so that you can see the different strategies. And you can also calculate your result, which I like to see, the speckled, make sure we're getting the milling the way we want. You can see the undercuts. Maybe you have to go back and apply another user define if you don't like to see, if something you don't like to see. But the simulation, it's a little bit slower. I rarely, really rarely use this. I ran this the other day in a job that I'll show you, and when you see the job, you'll know why I ran it. But other than that, I rarely run this. I mean, the strategies and tooling have gotten so good that when it calculates, you're pretty much good to go. Rerunning toolpaths. You can go back to the hyperview. You can delete some of these strategies out of the list here, and you can rewrite the milling file. One time, I think it was, I had an older mill that was doing some fissure milling or something like that. And I forgot what happened, but the burr broke, not in my roll and not in a newer version, but I didn't have another 0.6 burr. So I actually just deleted the strategy out and was able to continue the milling. Tools preview. This I find useful because sometimes we're switching tools around, especially that 0.3s, maybe um, you know, in a tool slot that maybe Millbox was using, or that 3.0. So having the preview of the tools, especially when myself is going over to another system and setting it up for milling, is nice to have. And this is in the print project setup. I had to click on the display use tools for a little while. I couldn't find it, and then there it is. I really like to see my tools to know that I'm set up properly. The old days of milling hybrids. This is in our old software, and we would set something up like this. We were limited to our boundary that we can expand this to 4mm plus a taper. And then we had to put our support structure on there manually. And then down here on the bottom a little bit, in like the 7 o'clock position, those were collisions that I just couldn't get rid of. So it was going to collide into puck. So I put some fake milling in there to clear out the area before we started milling. This thing calculated in 3-4 minutes, but I'd sit there running simulations and simulations and simulations. And you just realize, well, wow, this isn't really worth it. The new software just kind of does it for me. And you would get these bad millings. Now, this isn't mine. I asked my brother if I could borrow this picture. This is a bad milling and a really bad day. And I'm not sure. I've never had one this bad. I'm not sure what I would do if I got this out. I would probably start over. Him and the skill set he has, he would green state finish it. But I don't even know how long that would take me and if it would turn out right. So I would probably back up and start over. But I'll tell you, in seeing that picture, this is the worst milling I've gotten in 2 years. I intentionally attempted to get this so to show printing versus milling, and I didn't turn on any user defined, any undercut selection, and I was trying to get a bad milling. This is the worst thing I've gotten in terms of bad milling, and it's just really the software is so advanced, the strategies are so good. I really think those days of bad milling are kind of gone. And this is nice. This is easily green state finishable. If you were to put a little extra time in with the undercuts, maybe you got 15, 20 minutes instead of an hour. Um, and you're able to keep your contours that you designed. So in hybrid milling, here's some highlights that I think it's an excellent strategies, excellent tooling, and the tooling is important. We'll talk about the tooling. And in Hyperdent, it's fast setup, little calculation trouble. And if you run into calculation troubles, I'll show you some tips here. But I don't really have too many, as long as I'm kind of in the capabilities of the machine. Um, Going through a quick setup. It's actually a video. So here's me just quickly setting up a hybrid, and in real time, I think this is running at 50%. It took me 4.5 minutes to set this up. So I do start my by importing my bridge first and checking the size and calculating the size. And then I add my puck. And here's a little bit of the delay as it starts doing a little bit of the thinking and the calculations for the strategy. But it's just a moment and then it proceeds. And then setting it up from there is really, really easy. And the calculation time for this bridge with all these user defines and stuff only took 12 minutes. I mean, that's pretty reasonable. So kind of straighten it out. And this is where really I saw the new computer shine, because everything was so much smoother. Like I said, the calculation time, I put a couple supports on there. I only put two on the outside. If I get an extra long bridge, maybe I'll put two on each side, but I don't load up your buckle facial side with supports. It's not really necessary. And Hyperdent, the back sides of that support structure will be connected to the puck, to the zirconia, and you can actually there's a selection to have a bunch more supports along the back. Millbox, you would have to manually add them on there, but I don't really see the need to have any extra supports. I've never had one drop off. These are the user defined, kind of looking in the direction of what you want to come in at to access those undercuts, drawing it, setting it. And here's the last one. 3, 4 usually cover it. Double check you're not outside the boundary and hit calculate. And that's really it. It doesn't take much when this thing says done too, and it's done. C clamp and open face milling is probably one of the most advanced thing that's come out for milling. And this video was actually Millbox in a C clamp and the Roland. And It's really nice. And you can choose to get in there with different burrs, usually the 1 millimeter burrs set by default. Um, and it'll clean it up nicely so that you don't have less work. And over time, my times become more valuable. I want the machine. There was a time I was like, I want a green state finish everything. And then it came, why am I green state finishing? Why am I spending an hour on this thing when I can have the mill spend an extra 30 minutes, not taking up my time, and then I save 30 minutes maybe on my end. So I really look to maximize my milling. I don't use the C clamp a lot. I've been using the open face a little bit more. And here's what it would look like in Millbox with the Roland 53. And there's videos out there online on YouTube on how to set these up. So you can certainly go and check that out. Here's the Hyperdent open face milling. If you had a C clamp, it would just be, a different angle, but setting up the user defined along the face there, it does a really good job. Here, as we move to more hybrid stuff, is geo and replace strategies. And I didn't even know this existed at first. And it started coming in and they started telling me like the STL from your software maybe not be accurate. And here's an example of the vortex screw. And why I really started having trouble as I started trying to angle this is that the STL off the 3Shape just wasn't spot on. There was a little ledge in there. So it detects the implant interfaces and applies the ideal strategy. That's the easiest way I can kind of explain this. And they both have different ways to go about it. Here's the Millbox replace. And in selecting the vortex on each of these, changes colors. It's a nice visual, and it will apply the ideal strategy and put that interface in there. Here's the Hyperdent Geo. This is in the new version. And what's nice about this as well is that Hyperdent 1 has a large library of options. So oftentimes we'll do our prototypes or provisionals with just a regular desk multi-unit screw. It's come with a verification. They're all over the place. So they'll put that in, they'll try it in, and then they'll give us a thumbs up. And we don't have to go back to 3Shape now and redesign or reapply that strategy. We can go in there, it knows where the interface is, and we can just change that to vortex or the desk screw, the new full arch screw, and the full arch screws on the right, the vortex screws on the left, without having to redesign anything. And that's really nice, a nice feature to have. In direct and multi-units, there is a wide range of these screws now. And this is really, I think, where I started leaning on the Hyperdent side more because they've really figured out great tooling for both these. Millbox has some too, but with the tooling that we've been added recently, it's really made milling these less of a challenge. I mean, I would sit there sometimes and be calculating a job like half a day or an entire day. And like you finally get it and you run that thing, you're like, oh, like who's doing this? And then kind of Hyperdent came into my life and it was actually like kind of a change of lifestyle. Like this is completely different and we enjoy doing these. Like I enjoyed the challenge before, but not like it was, not like it became. It became a real hassle. And here's one, for example, if you're milling like that full arch screw and you do an angle on it, we've previously pretty much just had flat round burrs available to us, and you just couldn't get in that corner very well until the T cutter. And it was maybe 2.5 years ago. I had a case that was designed and sent to me for milling, not designed by us, and it had a flat channel angled. And I was told, just get a T cutter. Well, they really didn't exist in the zirconia aspect of it. They were used for other purposes, but we really couldn't mill this confidently back then, consistently. And then I heard the T cutter came out, and I was like, this. Well, where's my? There it is. So the T cutter comes up through the underside. This is not a Hyperdent T cutter. This is just a picture of a T cutter burr I pulled offline, and it kind of just mills back and forth, and it cleans out that screw seat and that channel, and you know when you put that screw down that you're going to have a good seat. This was really a game changer, I think, in milling. So Millbox has the 2 millimeter and the flat end burr. This is just standard tooling that I think comes with the software when you buy it stock. And the rolling 3 millimeter PMMA burr, I think is definitely, if you're milling PMMA on a 52 or 53, go get that 3 millimeter burr if you don't have it. Hyperdent has the 3 millimeter burr. The 1.5 bull nose. This was a tool that I said, what do I need this thing for? I didn't understand it. And why do I need this bull nose burr? Just an extra, takes up an extra space. It's kind of like my favorite universal tool now inside of the T cutter. I kind of think of it as a long ball plus a flat burr. It has it's very long, so it gets down into those screw channels that are far. Very useful, and has also changed the way we mill these hybrids today. And the T cutter, like I said, game changer. Um, Helps with large bridges, and has really changed the way we do things, changed our capabilities. Both those, the bull nose and the T cutter, I just love them both. Like I said, I didn't even. It's like, what is this bull nose burr? I don't need this burr. And definitely it's enlightened me. Estimated mill times. How many people hate looking at that thing? And whether it's printing or milling, I mean, it's everywhere, and it's just not accurate. That thing comes up and it says whatever time. Here, the top, I forgot what was milling on the top on the left side here, but it says 3 hours and 1 minute when it was supposed to take 2 hours and 21 minutes. And the bottom job was Hyperdent and took 33 minutes when it was estimated at 31 minutes. And I talked to Hypernet one time, and they said they were actually proud of making this accurate. And I again thought, well, what the heck, who cares? But I care now, because I look at the screen and it says 6 hours and 34 minutes, and it took 6 hours and 42 minutes. And I say Hyperdent estimates very much make my wife happy. I'll be waiting at the end of the day, and she'll say something like, when are you going to be home? And you used to say, I don't know. It says 2 hours, but it could be 3. And now I really don't have excuses. It says 2 hours. It's going to take 2 hours. I know I'll be home. I have, it's very nice when I look at that and know that it's accurate. And here's a milling job that I was particularly proud of. It's the 53 there. And I loaded, I think, 7 hybrids, and it took 22 hours and 35 minutes. That mill ran straight through, not a problem. Every single one came out perfectly fine. And in the estimate, it was only off by 29 minutes over almost an entire day's time. I mean, that's really incredible. That's just 4 minutes. And then if you take the average of those hybrids, 3 hours and 18 minutes. I mean, that's really, really quick. And although that was the rolling 53, and as you see, one of my burrs actually did run red there. But that is why I cut my tool time down on my Hyperdent setup with hybrids, because I just don't want that thing maxing out and causing a lot of trouble. So if anyone wonders if you can mill for an entire day, there it is. Milling angles, knowing your capabilities. We do a lot of hybrid printing prototypes, and in printing, you could pretty much do whatever you want. It'll print, but doesn't mean you can mill. So start when you're designing, keeping that in mind. Knowing what to do when you do error out. And here I mentioned rotating the design in a more favorable position, or using C-clamp as a bailout. And this is a case that I recently, I think maybe 6 months ago, and we printed it, and we didn't do an angulated screw channel, and it was coming through the facial. And I told the doctor, we'll fix that later. Well, when it came time to fixing it, I couldn't fix it. I couldn't get it lingual enough. So he said, bring it through the gingiva. And this was 25 degrees through the gingiva. Unfortunately, you really can't get that. If you see here, and a nice little thing is you can pop up when you kind of hover over things in Hyperdent, it's 39 degrees. I mean, my mill is only capable of um, 35, and it's blowing out that section there. So I went to the C clamp, and the C clamp was the savior for this because it tilted up. I was outside. I used the C clamp setup, and it was able to get in there and mill that cleanly. So that was just setting it up with the C clamp so that you can get that angle there. And there's more accurate descriptions of what's going on here, but in the 52 rolling specifically, if you think about where your C clamp is and stuff and how that works, and it rotates up, you can rotate 360 degrees, where I think the Roland 52 is only set up to go 30 degrees in the opposite direction. And the 53, when you're looking at it from the face, it can spin 360 degrees. So think about that as you're setting this up. And if I have a challenging access channel or something like that, and how I can position this a little bit differently to get in there, because we have 30 or 35 in one direction, but we kind of have unlimited in the other direction. And here's a job I recently did and put through to show you. And there's the hyperdent error. That means it's not going to work. And this was on the 52, rolling 52. And that was the screw channel that was giving us trouble. So it said it was 35 degrees, and we only have 30 degrees capability on this mill. So what I do, I just rotated it a little bit, and it completed successfully calculation. So that's all it took, was just that little tweak from, I guess, 12 o'clock to maybe 1, 2 o'clock. Here's another one. Another one that just came up this week, and I should have probably reangulated that channel, but they wanted the final with the prototype, so I just went with it and aired out. And I don't really I don't think about this too much. I just start twisting the bridge a little bit. Um, there was the channel that gave us trouble, and I went from whatever angle that is, and I just rotated it slightly. And you can see here, so we went from like the 6 o'clock to the 5 o'clock, and it calculated just like that, just by moving it, just a little bit. And that is really valuable information as you're trying to nest these and set these up. Is that just a little bit of movement is really helped me with some of these more challenging cases. Milling depth. This is also something that was taught to me in Hyperdent. This particular screw channel was too long. This was in a 30 millimeter puck, and I could not get, even with that bull nose, all the way down to the bottom. And then, so you'll see the screw channel strategy. And then if you go into the implant interface, you can change the category so that it sets it up to mill from both sides. And this is extremely helpful with longer channels or bigger pucks. Now we're milling at 30 millimeter, where we never used to. So, and then you can see there, it's added the extra strategy. So it'll come in from both sides to finish that screw channel. Quick tips. This was sent to me. Exocad, have your construction info in the folder with your STL. And in 3Shape, here's the settings that you're going to want to set up. The 30X file, abutment curves, and here's what kind of your folder would look like from a 3Shape output. And this will allow you to, the software is to identify your implant interfaces and your screw channels, and extremely useful. Otherwise, you're sitting there setting this up manually, and you won't have that 4.5 minutes to set up a hybrid. Here's one, just a quick thing. It happens for me from time to time. If you set up a case in Hyperdent, and I don't want that, whatever reason. There's this HTTP file, or the opposite, where you bring it back in later. Like I did have one recently. Someone emailed me a file without all the 30X or construction info, and I had to set it up manually. All those kind of settings that you set up in there will be saved in this HTTP file. So if you want to go back, delete the file, or if you bring it back up, if it's in the same folder and you didn't change anything in the folder, it will bring a lot of your setup on your case back in. Very nice feature as well. So here we are. I kind of look at this as I'm torn, and I just call it a tie. We're both racing to the same goal, and how we get there is just differently. And I just really believe that having both of these has made our lives easier. Me with the Hyperdent, I love having it, and our milling techs love the simplicity of Millbox. Not to say one's easier than the other. It's just, what they find easy to set up and work with. And I really couldn't see life today without both of them. It's changed my life. Both companies, amazing companies. Hats off to everybody who works inside of them and all the work they do on the back end to make our life easier. I mean, the things we're doing today was so difficult even just like a year ago or 18 months ago. I mean, it's constantly advancing. While the machining is not really advancing, the software behind the scenes allowing us to mill these incredibly complex restorations is constantly being updated, and they're on top of things. And the demands on the lab are increasing every day. And definitely hats off to both these companies and what they've developed.
Thank you so much, Dan. I do have some of the responses to the polls if you want to comment on any of those. So it seems that 100% of our attendees are using CAM. 50% have not updated their CAM and 50% have. It seems that right now 100% of our attendees are using Roland's.
Very nice. So with the update, if I definitely have always been so scared to do those updates. And I don't know how many years you guys are behind. Sometimes it just like a year behind maybe or something like that, but they're adding new features and strategies. The CAM is getting faster. The calculations are getting faster. Definitely, this is one area where I do take the step towards the updates, where maybe like your design software, you're a little afraid to take that step. I'm definitely moving forward in my milling CAM software.
It seems that most of the attendees are using Millbox and something other. So we have that there as well. As far as full arch screws, 100% who've answered are using the full arch screw. So I don't know if you want to comment on any of that.
Yeah, so the new desk screw, we started using a little bit from people who requested or specific to a certain case. Definitely, if you don't have a T cutter set up, or you don't have you might want to look into Hyperdent if you're doing some more of these full arches. I really think it's made life so much easier, and it's an unknown what's going down that channel, and it's so dependent upon the strategy set up, whether or not. And in digital, we don't have a model, so we don't have anything to fit on. So when I push that button, I need to know it's going to fit the multi-unit and fit the screw. So that's definitely nice. And we love the full arch screws. Who likes the cement tie bases anymore? Nobody likes to do that. So
67% of our attendees are using Sierra tools and 33% are not. That answered the poll. And
Yeah, we definitely see a difference from time to time, and we've kind of tracked them. We see premature chipping, uh, and we see some mill lines. Recently, we had one set up, and all of a sudden, nothing was fitting well out of that mill. So for us, we definitely see an advantage to sticking to the Sierra tools.
100% are not using the T cutter.
Wow. I mean, the T cutter really, if you're doing full arch screws, is a game changer. Previously maybe you weren't able to get 25 degrees angulation. I don't even think about it anymore. When maybe we're designing for somebody else who's milling, that's one of the first questions I ask now. Do you have a T cutter? Because I know maybe I can't do some of the design or re-angulate a channel quite as much as I would here. Um, definitely look into either getting the T cutter integrated into your Hyperdent or yeah, definitely a game changer.
And most people, their milling challenges were angles and calculation times, like you thought they were going to be.
Yeah, the calculation time, and I'll tell you, when you're doing a hybrid or something and you're running that calculation and simulating and having to go back, I mean, a 30-minute calculation time, next thing you know, it's lunch. Um, and you've only done it a few times maybe. And I would definitely look into the computer, updating your software, and the milling angles is like I said, some tweaks, depending, well, 100% of people were using rolling, so that those tweaks would apply. But if you're not, just get to know your machine, and I mean, it doesn't take much. If you got a bad screw channel, it doesn't take much to turn that, and all of a sudden you basically have unlimited access to that channel with the mill.
I just want to let everybody know that, we're open for questions. So if you have any questions, please type them in and we'll get to them. But I just want to let you all know that next on Zon Academy, we have coming up on November 6th, full arch hybrids, planning and material options with Dimitri Tasilis. On November 13th, we have Denture Conversions 101 with Dan Thornton, CDT from Nighthawk Dental Laboratory. On November 20th, we have Zirconia Restorative Solutions from Monolithic to Layered with Dennis Urban, CDT, who is also the NADL CDT of the Year. And on November 15th, we are hitting the road to Houston with our Zon Dental Roadshow. So we'd love it if you are in the Houston area or always wanted to go to join us for a great day of learning everything about 3D printing, milling, and new innovations in dental laboratory technology. So we'd love to have you there. Just go to Zon Dental and click on the education portion, and that will take you right to where you need to register. Right now, all these courses are ready for you to register, so we look forward to seeing you and our upcoming education events. I want to thank you so much, Dan, for joining us. If you have questions for Dan in the future, all you have to do is go to Zon Dental at henryschein.com and leave us your question, and we'll get it over to Dan, and we'll get the answer back over to you. I hope everybody has a great day, and thank you so much for joining us at Zon Academy. And thanks, Dan, for everything.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.